Well, hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in again. This is walkthrough of New Light Part 2. If you haven't already, make sure that you go to the link below in the description or up in the right-hand corner to watch the walkthrough Part 1, where we talk about my Logic Pro template setup, my recording that I do into Logic, as well as my Line 6 Pod Go setup. If you haven't watched that already, that is pretty integral and crucial for what we're going to be talking about here. It builds on that. So make sure you go to those links to watch that video. Before we move on, make sure that you are, first of all, subscribed to my YouTube channel. I want to make sure that you're getting the freshest content each and every time that you log on to YouTube. Secondly, make sure that you have your notifications turned on so that it's the first thing that you see when you log on to YouTube. Like this video, comment on it, and then finally, my big ask of you is to share this video. The more people that get to see this video means that I get to keep on making these videos. So without further ado, just like we did for the last video, we are going to turn our attention to the screen. So once again, back in picture. So we're back in the New Light base project. We have everything. We have everything set up. We're ready to go. Before we move into talking about the editing side of the project, what I want to do is I want to highlight my project transport up here. That's where the project information is hosted. That's where you see the tempo, as you can see, this moves where the marker is. Most importantly, the division marker. Default is 16. So think 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda, especially if you are musically inclined. But I want to stick with the 64th subdivision. You'll see why in a second, but it gives a little bit clearer and a little bit more of a natural feel when we do the editing that we apply. So I always set that to 64 so that when we go into our flex editing, because spoiler alert, I'm not perfect. There are some times where I hit just right behind or right before the beat where it needs to hit. So I need to kind of correct a few things, especially because we want the track to sound as clean and on point as possible. So yes, I go into my editor, go to the beginning. Let's collapse our info. So I like to use the flex time function that is native to Logic. Whenever I'm recording, I'm only using native Logic plugins because one, I do this in my free time. So I don't have the expendable income to send and sync into Waves plugins or Native Instruments, anything that has a pay structure to it. I don't really have that, so I don't have the money to afford that. So I use everything that is native to Logic and kind of hack it from there. So I open up my editor. Right up in here, I turn on flex time so that we can enable the automatic. Logic is a really smart software. I personally live by the motto, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So Logic is really smart. It detects what kind of instrument I'm playing. And because it is like a single note structure for playing bass, I like to let it set up for that. So let me just play before we move into editing and walking through what I do for time aligning. Let me just play you what we recorded the other night with John Mayer's New Light. So just to save us time, I already, as you can see, went and flex edited the time markers in here. it's not fun to sit and watch someone scroll through, what is it? Almost 115 measures worth of data and information and just click and drag, because all that you're doing once you have flex time turned on, you're just dragging time alignment, these time markers here. So one quick trick that I generally use is the quantize function, especially if you have your subdivisions dialed in properly. And for this song, it is a pretty syncopated bass beat, so I just like to turn on my quantization to a 16th note, and it picks it up pretty well. But that's one quick little hack that you can perform in order to go in and make sure that your starting point is not from square one. You kind of have like a step 2 that you can go from to kind of edit and fix things. Now, one thing that's funky that I've found with flex time, let me find something. One thing that I've found that's a little funky with flex timing is when you get into where certain notes are played. Let's take from measure 17, beat 2, marker 9, where this is. So sometimes, if this is pre-quantization, sometimes Logic will like to say, oh, this is actually where the note started, and we drag it in, and then we zoom in just a little bit more, and it's actually not where the note started. It's just slightly before. You might not think, oh, this is an issue, but identifying where Logic has kind of skipped some of the fine-tuning is really important to the editing process when you're using quantization on things like bass tracks, especially if you're playing an acoustic or an electric rhythm or electric lead track. Definitely that lead track, if you are doing what we're the same concept that we're doing with dry recording and then re-amping your tones. So after I've gone through 100 some odd measures of just making sure that everything's time aligned, we have a pretty tight on beat groove. So that's kind of the first step in editing. Now we move to the second step. I want to turn some audio up in here. So the next thing that I like to do is, for this bass dry track, I do like to create some simple EQ and simple compression settings. So I go in, I actually really, really love the vintage tube EQ that is default. It's part of the Logic suite. So I'll go in, I'll go for an old school bass tone, kind of gives a little bit more warmth. And then I'll also, after that, throw a compressor on, and I will go to the guitars, and then I'll turn on the direct bass. With compression, this is the fun one. Threshold is kind of you can't go past this limit, and makeup is if there's any note that is quieter, it brings it up. So it kind of squishes a little bit. I honestly just leave these settings pretty standard, unless I need to adjust some compression to kind of get things a little bit more sticky, glue it together a little bit more in the mix. So let's just mute this and we'll play and see what we got. So without, that dry does sound really nice with some it has some good treble to it. But for a song like this, what I really want is a little bit more warmth. I will, on the reamping side, first of all, I will turn these effects off when I reamp because I want the driest signal as possible. We'll talk about that in the next video. But what I want to do for this is I want to make sure that this is as crisp and as clean as possible going into reamping, and then once I finish that, I do blend the reamp channel and the dry channel. So without that reamp channel, I do like to kind of tune this and dial it in. So let's listen to it pre-EQ. Now with EQ. So brings out a little bit more warmth, kind of the tubiness that you find from a console. And then now let's add some compressor in. Just kind of glues it all together, warms it up, makes it nice and crisp and clean. So that is the editing side on the software end of my Logic Pro setup. Pretty simple. I'm not honestly doing that much. There's not all, it's not a big mystery on how to make things sound good. It's just using your ears and researching a little bit to know what you need to do and when you need to do it. So that's all I've got for this video. Tune in the next time where we combine everything that we talked about in the first 2 walkthrough videos into reamping our bass track. It's a fun one. So thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share, and we will see you on the next video. Thanks so much.